When difficulty arrives, I will meet it with virtue, fortifying my mind against fear and grasping the opportunity to practice strength of character. The quote from Marcus Aurelius encourages drawing on inner resources of courage and discipline when facing life's inevitable troubles, rather than being emotionally overwhelmed. This reflects Marcus Aurelius's Stoic philosophy of enduring adversity with wisdom, while also bettering one's own character. I aim to convey his style of pithy, principled advice for maintaining perspective and resilience even when fortune turns foul. Wishing you patience and compassion on your journey. Please subscribe and share if you found this helpful. Until next time, may you find peace and serenity in the Stoic ways. Number 1. Communicate clearly and directly. Disrespect comes in many forms, subtle and overt. We've all faced it, and we will likely face it again. Though anger is the natural reaction, the Stoics teach us to respond with wisdom and composure. In his discourses, Epictetus said, "If evil be said of you, and if it be true, correct yourself. If it be a lie, laugh at it. Do not counter anger with more anger, as it will only escalate. Instead, stay centered within. When someone wrongs you, speak up clearly but calmly. Address them directly. Explain precisely how their words or actions were disrespectful, and tell them firmly the behavior must cease, as it is unacceptable. Appealing to their reason and morality is more likely to elicit change than lashing out emotionally. If they persist, know that their turmoil reveals their character, not yours. As Marcus Aurelius said, choose not to feel harmed, and you won't be. Own your reactions rather than giving others power over them. With patience and courage, turn clashes into opportunities to connect. Have the wisdom to walk away when conversations become unproductive. As Epictetus would say, know when it is time to disengage. Disrespect should never be tolerated or normalized. By following Stoic principles, we can stand against it without losing ourselves, turning confrontation into chances for understanding. Number 2. Set boundaries. The Stoics knew we all have boundaries, lines others must not cross for a relationship to continue, but rarely do we make those boundaries explicit. When someone unknowingly oversteps, quiet frustration builds as violations accumulate. As Epictetus taught, make the best use of what you can control. We alone determine how to communicate our boundaries and respond when pressed upon. When wronged, don't downplay silently. Speak tactfully but firmly. Explain precisely what was offensive, why it felt disrespectful, and what conduct you will no longer accept, whether words, actions, or unreasonable demands of time. Frame these as non-negotiable boundaries, not loose suggestions. As Marcus Aurelius reflected, true good fortune lies in what you create for yourself. We must teach others how we expect respect by upholding the dignity all people deserve. If boundaries are continually disregarded, reconsider whether the relationship is tenable. The Stoics knew, per Aurelius, you always own the option to distance yourself. By courageously and convincingly delineating limits, we nurture a mutual understanding rather than allowing contempt to take root. Not all will respect express boundaries, but many will, and from this, deeper connections emerge. As Seneca wrote, life without friendship is like the sky without sunlight. Through wisdom and truth, we light the way. Number 3. Don't retaliate or sink to their level. Few unjust actions sting more sharply than public insults meant to demean us before others. The urge to retaliate with equal venom is natural, but as Epictetus taught, reprove yourself instead of growing angry. Rather than lash back instinctively, pause, breathe deeply and reconnect with your core. Then, with calm steadiness, explain how the insult was unfair and hurtful. Answer barbs not with retaliation but virtuous honesty, exposing lies, clarifying misconceptions, or explaining your perspective if truth lies within the criticism. As Seneca wrote, judge your life by its nobility, not longevity. Noble courage is staying composed against verbal attacks. Take the moral high road, avoiding escalating insults or petty point scoring. Set an example of respectful dialogue. Withdraw with dignity if needed. The Stoics knew no one stays composed forever. As Aurelius wrote, you don't have to turn this into a crisis, it need not upset you. Our reactions alone determine whether insults damage our sense of self. By refusing false claims, power over our inner peace, we can respond to adversity with grace. Insults often reveal insecurities seeking compassion, but compassion begins with self, retaining tranquility amidst external turmoil. With principled calm worthy of Socrates, we show unjust criticism reveals more about the speaker than the intended target, and we deny those seeking to provoke the satisfaction they crave. Number 4. Document incidents. In an ideal world, addressing disrespect immediately would halt violations. Often, though, misconduct persists despite clear warnings. Emotions surge, details blur, conflicting claims arise. With no records, pursuing justice becomes impossible. Thus, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If outside your control, involuntary actions cease being failures, when repetition shows that control is impossible." Before reaching such resigned conclusions, documentation provides needed direction. Carefully record each incident, dates, times, actions, witnesses, and if warnings were previously given. Seek impartial accuracy, avoid charged language that could undermine credibility later. Communicate new offences directly in writing if possible, calmly urging cessation. Store messages securely against editing accusations post hoc. Understand thoroughly policies and laws against harassment and discrimination as you solidify your position. Sound documentation strengthens your case if formal action becomes essential. None should suffer disrespect without recourse, especially where cooperation matters most. As Aurelius lamented, consequences of anger and sadness are graver than their causes. Seek realignment with ethical good before accusations or punishment. Prepare fully for corrective measures to prove insufficient, having provided fullest opportunity for voluntary reform. With detailed documentation, you can stand firm in truth with evidence at the ready, giving every chance for private resolution while equipping yourself should egregious disrespect necessitate formal accountability channels as a last resort. Number 5. Limit contact where possible. When working or living alongside repeat offenders, fully controlling exposure is often impossible. But as Epictetus taught, do not demand the world conform to your wishes, but align your wishes to reality. Where removing disrespectful relationships entirely isn't feasible, limiting contact minimizes their soul-draining effects. First, seek to firmly establish boundaries around verbal disparagements or abusive behaviors. But some provocateurs persist even when clearly confronted. Aurelius wrote, "You must accept the true nature of things rather than demand reality conform to your ideals." When direct requests are disregarded, evaluate where ethically distancing yourself may help, via reprioritizing tasks, schedules, or roles. What collaboration is truly essential? Could duties be reallocated? Consider restricting interactions to essential channels like email or required meetings. Restraint means controlling what is within your power. Wisdom grants power over whether to remain perpetually present as a target for torment. As Seneca reflected, associate with those likely to improve you. Reduce contact with those unable or unwilling to reform destructive behaviors. Prevent further erosion of the soul. By limiting exposure as realities permit, while pursuing transitional opportunities, we maintain self-command without immediately severing key ties. Not all connections can or should be cut entirely, but disrespect left unrestrained slowly diminishes our inner light. With strategic self-preservation, the Stoics teach us to nurture courage until the seasons shift favorably. Number 6. Speak privately. When confronted publicly, many react defensively, doubling down rather than acknowledging wrongs. What could have sparked learning instead breeds resentment. Thus, the Stoics advise restraint when calling out disrespect before an audience. Per Aurelius, consequences of anger and grief are more serious than their causes. Our urge is to voice outrage directly where violations occurred, but wisdom asks that cooler heads prevail first. Address concerns tactfully in private if possible. State your grievances calmly and directly. Provide space for explanation and try to understand why the behavior endures. Much involuntary harm arises from ignorance rather than malice. Offer opportunity for dialogue without shame if cooperation permits. If reasonable resolution proves elusive, communicating disappointments publicly may then gain traction. But unnecessary spectacle often hinders reconciliation. As Epictetus wrote, Act properly out of shame if nothing else. Allow for quiet corrections before resorting to broader pressures. Private feedback shows your aim is resolution, not retaliation. Shifts demonstrated candidly first often ripple outward. In many cases, the appeal of public ridicule gives way to mutual betterment once threats of denunciation dissipate in favor of understanding. Direct engagement displays a willingness to understand their perspective, provide benefit of doubt, and mutually commit to improving conduct. But where dignified discretion fails, broader accountability becomes necessary. Number 7. Be confident and assertive. Few behaviors instill more self-doubt than enduring disrespect from those in power. In time, assertiveness erodes into passive acceptance. The Stoics called for the opposite, retaining true inner confidence and conviction against external assaults on dignity. Per Aurelius, confidence lies not in being always right but in not fearing wrongness. We reinforce self-worth through resilient conviction in the face of opposition, meeting mistreatment with virtuous strength rather than equally destructive force. When facing misconduct, address it assuredly, but without hostile accusations. Clearly state how words or deeds degraded your rights and dignity. If met with defiance, politely reaffirm that such behaviors cannot continue. Offer to cooperate toward reform, but only with mutual good faith efforts. Should violations persist, file formal grievances confidently, having provided fair warning and chance for correction beforehand, but do so seeking accountability and cultural growth rather than revenge. As Seneca stated, some madness exists in all brilliance, and indeed, it is madness to trade dignity merely to answer affronts with affronts. The Stoics knew we alone control our reactions, hence our dignity. No external words or deeds can reduce our worth without consent. Maintain principled professionalism not to avoid trouble but because inner tranquility matters more than validation ever could. With inviolable respect for justice, face mistreatment with courage, seek not to conquer opponents, but collective progress. Number 8. Seek advice from others. When continually demeaned, our faith in humanity wavers. Some expect poor treatment as the norm rather than an egregious deviation from ethical good. Lacking anchors, cynicism replaces hope. Yet as Seneca wrote, without a destination port, no wind is favourable. In tumultuous times, the Stoics sought wisdom from those already tested by storms. No matter the source of disrespect, others once weathered the same gales. Their experience offers needed perspective. Speak openly with trusted mentors, confidants, and friends about your grievances. Select careful listeners of proven discretion. Sound counsel never flows freely from those eager for selfish appetites alone. Unburden frustration, disappointment, and self-blame to receive the healing balm of human empathy. Ask what guidance they can impart from parallel trials faced. Our situations rarely match perfectly, but timeless principles emerge. Listen openly to strategies employed, barriers overcome, lines drawn to retain dignity. Adapt collective wisdom to inform whatever course ultimately feels truest to your values and context. As Socrates noted, he is richest who is content with least. Sharing turmoil with empathetic ears alone often lightens the spirit considerably. Gaining new beacons to rely on when inner fires dim, the path ahead seems less overcast. We rekindle dormant resilience and are reminded hope, truth, and justice still reside deeply in humankind's soul. Finding community surfaces power, if not to banish injustice outright, then refusing to let it conquer goodness within. As Aurelius wrote, bear and forbear. When disrespected, stand tall, but stand tall also by those wounded who walk alongside you. No victory transcends lifting each other from the valley of despondency. March ahead in fellowship, united in purpose. Let no soul wander alone. Number 9. Take a breather. Exercising restraint of tongue when enraged requires immense strength. In heated clashes, emotions and tensions run hot. Wisdom flows not freely. Hence Seneca's warning, some madness permeates all brilliance. And indeed primal reaction rages when affronts fly unrestrained. When disrespected, counterattack instinct surges as our pulse quickens. But true character shines by refusing outbursts that feel justified yet solve nothing. Per Aurelius. Accept the nature of things rather than demanding conformity to your ideals. In rising tensions, step away to clear perceptions. Calmly declare intent to revisit the exchange in more thoughtful states. If needed, agree to resume dialogue later. Walk away sans guilt, frustration, or threats. Use the interlude to calm inner storms, addressing immediate physical needs like rest, nutrition, and hydration. Only once restored can we reflect clearly on events. Review both perspectives. Make notes on possible misunderstandings, compromises, or agreements. Return grounded and restate your position dispassionately, claiming no singular truth. Provide space for their lens, seeking common ground. Many disputes arise from poor communication rather than ill intent. If disrespect continues, disengage smoothly, having demonstrated patience while standing firm in conviction. As Epictetus taught, speak only when necessary, and then keep it brief. In wrathful moments, restraint allows wisdom to emerge. Time-tested principles hold true. The hottest flames soon calm when fueled judiciously. And from peaceful embers, respect may yet rise again. Number 10. Clarify intent and impact. In this age of accelerated virtual connection, much communication occurs via informal digital snippets prone to misconstruing. Devoid of facial and bodily cues, intended meanings often wildly diverge from recipient interpretations. Thus, when accused of disrespectful messaging, the Stoics first re-examine motivations before responding defensively. In Aurelius's words, they act this way because they cannot differentiate good from evil. When confronted, avoid immediate counterattack. Instead, courageously inquire what exact words or actions caused offense and why the impact was hurtful. Set aside reflex to self-justify. Listen fully and reflect back their statements, seeking to understand rather than defend. If certain aspects seem unreasonable, tactfully note this. Next, clarify your true intent. Was the meaning drastically misread? Offer additional context if necessary. Explain mitigating factors without declaring overreaction. If indeed you spoke or acted in error, apologize plainly and unequivocally. Consider what unconscious biases may have surfaced, requiring self-reflection. If no error reasonably occurred, confidently but non-accusatorily state this. Outline how the interpretation diverged from your experience. Propose that varied wiring and experiences filter identical statements differently without assigning blame. Suggest agreeing to disagree if reconciling interpretations remains impossible. Thoroughly probing perceived meanings rather than disputing receptions opens space to reconcile. With generosity, moral courage, and cool heads, the possibility of mutual understanding persists. Number 11. Find common ground. Even the most superficial bonds depend on basic courtesies to sustain them. Yet somehow, as differences emerge, respect frays and connections unravel. Vitriol breeds more venom until commonwealth seems an impossible, childish dream. But just as the Stoics saw society as the accumulation of individual virtue, so too is each conflict a microcosm awaiting redemption. For even through the starkest disputes run strands of kinship if we but trace them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "This is a fine occupation to search diligently for the truth in all things. When embroiled in trial, seek not narrow victory but broader understanding. Appeal not to ego but conscience. Ask sincerely, devoid of judgment, how actions thought disrespectful advanced higher order aims. Even malicious deeds hold shards of virtue when viewed through a wide enough lens. Was the wider community considered before self? Did instincts arise from protecting dignity, security, or stability for those dependent on one's duties? Might valid outrage exist if events were seen from their perspective rather than the abstract distance of birds in flight? Listen earnestly, resist labeling deeds as categorically profane. Clarify how similar aims may be achieved through channels holding truer to justice. Offer partnership in rising together on righteous, enlightened paths sowing dignity and mutual reverence. As Epictetus taught, difficulties show men what they are. Confrontation reveals whether wisdom and empathy outweigh base reaction. In division, we find our reflections and a choice on what image we wish to present moving forward. By seeking the fuller context around offenses, the door remains open for virtue to emerge from darkness. Number 12. Use humor carefully. Laughter uniquely captures attention, disarming tensions when little else can. Yet joking wrongly when emotions run high risks insult on top of injury. Thus, the Stoics understood humor as a blade to be wielded with exceeding care. Few diffusers rival mirth and wit for cutting animosity, allowing reflection to replace reflex. And shared laughter forges bonds, unlike more sober discourse. As Cicero wrote, "Just as we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, we should listen twice as much as we speak." Thus, timing matters greatly when injecting jests. Before interjecting lightness, listen closely for signals from the offended party. Have initial tensions eased into introspection? Does space exist for comradely rapport? Err toward patience until a drop in fury signals readiness to humanize differences. When the moment arrives, start small with benign observations about the absurdity an argument descended into vitriol and turmoil. Chronicle escalations through the lens of impartial reason. Avoid loaded language. Describe rather than judge. With ongoing dialogue, this satire highlights senselessness subtly. Should doors gradually open to direct humor, tread carefully still. Do not ridicule the actions or positions causing outrage, but surround the exchange with revelations of our shared flaws and foibles. Cautiously highlight emotional excesses you may also be guilty of, hoping they will join in self-reflection. Follow any jest quickly with sincerity, reaffirming dignity and purpose. Laughter must never belittle the marginalized, but unveil blindness in us all. It should not undermine dissent's roots, but reveal our collective hurdles on the road to justice. Handled appropriately, comedy is beloved because it mixes relief and hope. The vulgar alone provoke reactions, the divine inspire change, and change rests on uplifting hearts, not further dividing them. When difficulty arrives, I will meet it with virtue, fortifying my mind against fear and grasping the opportunity to practice strength of character. The quote from Marcus Aurelius encourages drawing on inner resources of courage and discipline when facing life's inevitable troubles, rather than being emotionally overwhelmed. This reflects Marcus Aurelius's Stoic philosophy of enduring adversity with wisdom, while also bettering one's own character. I aim to convey his style of pithy, principled advice for maintaining perspective and resilience even when fortune turns foul. Wishing you patience and compassion on your journey. Please subscribe and share if you found this helpful. Until next time, may you find peace and serenity in the Stoic ways.